where I am going to have a special guest. You might already know her. It's hospice nurse Penny. Welcome, everybody. Come on in. Can everyone hear me and see me? I'm literally in my bed, and I look like I've been in bed all day because I kind of have. I don't know about you guys, but I've been getting migraines like every day. Hey, Laura. Hey, Peter. Hey, Megan. Hey, Callie. Probably saying that name wrong. Kalei. Welcome, everybody. Come on in. Can everybody hear me? Jules, you have a terrible headache too? Yeah. Hello from Australia. Hey, Corey. Hey, Debbie. Hey, Sebastian. Or what happened to Sebastian? Hi from Sacramento. Hey, Cynthia. I love Sacramento, or like the surrounding area. Hey, Megan. Me and your girl are going to be on live tonight. I'm going to have a special guest, hospice nurse Penny. We're going to talk all things hospice, and she is quite the expert. So it'll be lovely to talk to her, and she has some exciting news. So, and we're besties too. So welcome. While we wait for her, let's just chat in the comments and say hello. Happy New Year. Hello. How come I haven't said that? Happy New Year to everybody. I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday. Just started hospice for my partner, Dennis. I'm glad you're here then. This is really good night to be here. I'm going to try to be here every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And here she is, everybody. Miss Hospice Nurse Penny. Look at her. Oh,
Hello.
that reminds me. I got to get my lighting. I wonder why I look so dark. Where is my lighting? You look amazing, Penny.
Thank
Oh,
you. It's the ring light. The ring
right?
light does
Well,
wonders.
lighting does do wonders. Mine's a little bright right now. Let me turn it down. Hold on. I was just telling them I've been like in bed all day because I have been feeling sick with a migraine.
Again? That
I
sucks.
know, dude. It's been like on and on and on. Hold on. Let me see. What the hell am I doing here?
I haven't had one for a while. I had one, I guess I had one a couple weeks ago because I had just told my friends that I haven't had any migraines for a while. And then a couple days after that, I had one. I was
It's like,
like,
boom. Right. I know. Okay. There's my light. Okay. Great. Okay. So here we are. Hospice Nurse Penny. Welcome, everybody. And welcome to our live together. I think most of you guys know Penny, but if you don't, this is Penny, also known as Hospice Nurse Penny. She is on YouTube, she's on Instagram, she's on TikTok, she's on Facebook as Hospice Nurse Penny. And her and I are besties. Is that your,
yes,
is that Kevin?
yes, that's Kevin.
And
I
she
was,
has a dog named Kevin. And we both have dogs with like human names. Her dog's name's Kevin, my dog's name's Roy.
and Pam the cat.
And Pam the cat.
Yeah, I don't know why he's moaning.
He wants
I
to
think he
be on
dropped his
yeah.
antler.
Oh, okay. Okay, so the big news that so Penny has been a hospice nurse for many years, and she's been on social media educating about hospice of all types of information about hospice. She's an expert in hospice care, and has a book coming out. She has a book coming out.
Here, wait, let me show you the other cover because that one's too shiny and the light glares off of it. This has my
At that
bookmarks in it.
influencing death.
Influencing Death, Reframing Dying for Better Living.
How amazing is that cover? I freaking love that cover.
I know, me too. It's an awesome cover. And the book
So
is good too.
I was just gonna say, Penny, talk a little bit about the book. Tell us about the book, and then when they can get it, which is now, but when it's coming out and all the things. So let's hear it. Let's
Yeah,
hear it, baby.
so I've been a hospice nurse for 20 years and I started working in hospice inpatient, which is like at the bedside, in your face, death and dying. Everybody comes in pretty much to die in an inpatient care center. And I was also a hospice case manager, home hospice case manager, and I've worked in quality and education and regulatory. But I started writing stories when I first became a hospice nurse. So, probably about 18 years ago is when I started writing the stories. So some of these stories are pretty old. But I went on TikTok. Well, before I got on TikTok, I actually started writing a screenplay because Amazon had this program where you could write a screenplay. Kevin, get away. Where's your antler? Get it. Get it. I knew he
Kevin,
was going to do this to me, and Randy's not
Kevin
home.
stealing the show.
So I was so frustrated with medical shows, and I was like, I really wish there was a realistic show about hospice because also in my work, as you know, Julie, we're dealing with people who don't know what hospice is. When they come onto hospice, they don't know what it is. They don't know anything about death and dying. And
Kevin gets it. Kevin gets it.
so Amazon had this program where you could write a screenplay and they would choose like amateur writers to create shows about them. And I started writing it. I took my stories and started making them into a screenplay, and then they stopped doing that. So I shelved it for a while. And then when I got on TikTok, I had lots of people telling me, you should write a book. You should write a book. So I thought, yeah, maybe I should go ahead and do this. So it's a memoir, and it's kind of about my life. I had a rocky road, kind of like Julie. I'm in sobriety also.
Penny has had an amazing, exciting, crazy, cool life. Yeah.
It's been pretty wild. It's been a wild ride. So I didn't become a nurse until I went to nursing school in my 40s. So I wanted to, like make this a memoir about, okay, I'm going to have to, I knew he was going to do this. Where's your antler? I think he dropped it under the couch, but I have a standby for him.
Okay.
I got a bone. I got a bone to pick with you, mister. Here.
Um,
Sorry.
the chat just said Penny's hot. Can she nurse me? Penny is hot. Penny is hot. Penny is hot.
So is Julie. That's why everybody always thinks I'm Julie.
Oh my god, thanks, girl. Oh,
So yeah, anyway, so it's a memoir and it's educational, but it's also inspirational and it's kind of there's funny stuff in there, funny stories.
yeah.
My life, dark humor and all kinds of stuff. You'll laugh, you'll cry. It's good. And it's available for pre-order now wherever books are sold online.
Yeah. And you guys listen, for anyone out there who wants to get into hospice and maybe think and wishes they would have, Penny just said, she was in nursing school in her 40s.
Yeah.
So it's not too late. I mean, like people, you can nursing school, it's over before you know it. And next
Well,
thing you
and
know, you're a nurse,
I started as an LPN, so that was quicker. Didn't think that decided to go apply because it was really my dream to be a hospice nurse. And they hired me as an LPN, and then I just worked my way up through
Yeah.
school all along and got my bachelor's.
Yeah, I mean, that's freaking amazing, and Penny is like I mean, she's been a hospice nurse for 20 years, so that right there is just tons of experience, but also she's an expert, I think, in, like, the regulatory side of I mean, she's an expert in all things, hospice, but, like, the regulatory side of hospice, I feel like you're so good at, which
The
means
boring parts.
well, but people need to know about it. But I mean, it might be boring to some, but generally speaking, it's like what makes everything roll. So she's an expert in like what's allowed, what's not allowed, what you can do, what you can't do, what hospice companies are allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. When they say no to something, is that legit or is it not legit? Penny knows that shit.
Yeah. I just
Yeah.
saw so there's a woman on TikTok whose son is in a persistent vegetative state. He lives in a nursing home. He was hit by a car 3 years ago, and they put in life prolonging interventions, including tube feeding. And he's able to use like a communication system to where, like, how people can look at a monitor and
Hmm.
it'll say words. And she asked him if he wanted to continue to live like this, and he said no. He's been through all kinds of surgeries, and it's just horrible. He has no quality of life. So she wants to pull the tube feeding and put him on hospice. And she was told that because he's on Medicaid in the nursing home, he can't go on hospice. And I was like, no, 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 no. Medicaid will still pay room and board. Lots of people go on hospice who are in nursing homes. So anyway, side note as
Yeah,
far as
it's
the regs, whenever I
important
see something
to
like that.
yeah. Okay, so I'm hearing that people okay, so some people can hear us and some people cannot. Can you guys let me
No
know?
sound, ladies. Anyone having issues, close the live and come back, says Megan. We can't hear everything. Some
Oh,
people
they
hear,
said
some are not. I don't know what the deal is. I can hear you fine.
I can hear yeah,
I can hear in UK.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll keep going then, I guess.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
someone
somebody
said they
went out.
closed it and opened it and it's fine now.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I saw that too.
I'm also on my earbuds, so I wonder if I should take those out?
I don't know. I can hear you fine. I mean, I don't have earbuds in. Maybe I should put them in.
No, I think it's fine. I hear you fine too. Okay, well, I guess we'll keep going and it worked closing out and coming in. Okay. So if you
Okay,
can't
good.
hear us, leave the live and then come back.
We'll still be
And
here.
it may be okay. Yeah, we're going to be here for the next hour. So,
Yeah, a couple people have said that. Yep. Yep, that's the trick. That's the ticket.
yeah.
That's the
So
ticket.
we'll answer questions in the comments too. So if you have something really pressing, write it in all caps. And again, Penny's book is out for pre-order now. It's called Influencing Death. What's the subtitle? Sorry.
Reframing dying for better living.
Yeah, and you can get it anywhere books are sold, Influencing Death.
Yeah, and it's paperback, hardcover, ebook, and audio. And I did the narrating on the audio, which I know you know, Julie, was
Yes,
really hard.
so hard. And it's officially out January 19th?
14.
14th, January
Yes.
14th, officially
12 more
out.
days. Woohoo!
Wow. So if you order it now, you'll be able to get it in just 2 weeks, so you won't be waiting too long, which I love. That's great, that's
Yes.
great.
Yeah, and I guess you get it on the day on the 14th if you order it from Amazon. And Amazon has the paperback on sale right now. Somebody's asking, what is a progressive care unit? A PCU.
I
So
don't
that's
know. Do you
so it's
know?
a it's yeah, it's an ICU
Okay.
step down.
Oh, okay.
Um, or also some people call med surge a PCU.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah. And then what
Is
are
Kevin a hospice comfort dog?
no, he's an annoying dog. And can we see him? He's got his bone now and he went into the other room. But he is cute.
Julie Teacher says she can't wait to read your book.
Thank you.
Question, if you're looking for an RN hospice job, how do you tell a good program from bad?
Well, you can look up their quality metrics on hospice Medicare Compare Hospice. So if you just Google Medicare Compare Hospice, that'll take you to the website medicare.gov, and I think it's slash care dash compare, but you can Google it and find it. And you put your zip code in, and it will tell you all of the Medicare certified hospices in your area, which is the first thing. Always work for Medicare certified hospice. And then you can
Medicare
compare.
certified.
Yep,
Yes.
and then you can compare, you can see their average daily census on there, so you can tell if they're a big hospice or a little one. You can see their quality scores to see if they have good, like a good star rating. So
You
that's a
could
start.
you could also just go for an interview too and ask questions like what's the caseload? How
Mhm.
often do you have to work on call? Like how many nurses are on call? How many, because that stuff matters
Yes.
to the
Yeah,
patients
definitely.
and to the staff, to the patients
Yeah,
and to the
and
staff.
caseload, I think right now, probably the average is 12 to 15,
Yeah.
unless you work in a SNF, and then it's more, then it could be like 20 or 25 if you work in a SNF. That's a
Oof.
skilled nursing facility for
Yeah.
people who don't know. Um, but
So
yeah.
I have a couple questions about your book
Okay.
because I want to know.
Okay.
So, do you have a favorite chapter in your book?
I knew you were gonna ask me that,
Hmm.
because you asked me that before, And I
And you
was like,
probably told me, and I can't remember because
no,
I
what I
don't have
said
a brain.
was, it's hard for me to pick out a favorite. I think, well, I don't know. One of my favorites is called For God's Sake, Forget the Harps. And it's about a young man whose uh, mom had raised him. She was a single parent, and he was dying when I met him. And she was so worried about what was happening with him. And of course, the doctor didn't tell her, that he was really close to death. And when I went there, she was playing like this classical music. And so I got there and I told her how to take care of him. And then as I was leaving, I said, "Is this the kind of music that he would like to listen to?" And um, she said, "Oh, no, I hadn't really thought about that. It just seemed like the right kind of music to play when somebody's dying." So then when I went back, and I went back the same afternoon because he transitioned really quickly and he was dying and she was panicking. So she called and I was able to go back. And I do say in the book that we're not always able to do that. It's really important for people to know. But when I walked back in, there was this loud music playing, and it was like this fuck, fuck, fuckity, fuck this, fuck that rap going on. And I walked in, and I was like, well, that's definitely a change of tempo from the,
That's
and
perfect.
she, yeah. So anyway, that's probably one of my favorite stories. But I like them all. I like all my stories because I think they're pretty good.
I think your personal stories too, not just your hospice stories, but your personal
Yeah.
stories about your life are just so good.
Yeah, there's a story in here that when I was doing the narration for the audiobook, I started laughing and I had to stop because I was cracking up. And it was about when I lived in Okinawa. I took my daughter to the pool and I just met a bunch of new, like, military wives, right? So my husband was in special forces and he left. And so I knew nobody. So these women invited me to go to the pool, and all of a sudden, one of them jumps up and she runs over and she scoops something out of the water, and it was a turd. She goes, and she runs into the bathroom with it. And I go, "What's happening?" And they said, "Well, if somebody's pooping in the pool, they'll close it down. They'll shut it down, and for cleaning, and that'll be it. We won't be able to swim anymore." And so Eden, my at the time she was 2 years old, all of a sudden these little poops start popping up around her. Bloop, bloop, all around her in the pool, and I was like, "Oh shit!" And they
Literally,
literally,
literally.
literally, and they shut the pool down, and uh, they didn't invite me to go swimming anymore.
Yeah, Penny has lived all over this fine world, and she also lives off grid right now.
Yeah.
Do you have the "Help Me Divorce My Husband" in the book?
Yes. Help me leave my husband.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
tell that story?
I have a chapter
This is
called
what I
"Help
mean by Penny's life, you guys. This is what I mean by Penny's life.
Help Me Leave My Husband." Yeah, "Help Me Leave My Husband." Yeah, so when I was in two I want to say it was 2002, um my second husband, who was a special forces soldier, we'd been married for 10 years and we finally just had enough of each other. It was an amicable, disillusion. We just really fought like siblings all the time and we're sick of it. And basically, we're like, let's get divorced. But I had been a stay at home homeschooling mom and I needed a job. So I said, I think I should go to nursing school. And at that time, he was in the military. But I didn't work. So we were a single income family. But he made just enough for us to not qualify for any financial aid.
Mhm.
So I had seen this woman, or heard about on the radio, this woman named Karen, appropriately. And she started a website called Save Karen to pay off her credit card debt. So I started a website called helpmeleavemyhusband.com to raise money for school. And it went big time viral for what was going on in those days. And there was like, they started calling us internet panhandlers because this was way before GoFundMe. There was no Facebook, nothing like that. And so it got picked up by the AP and the Associated Press. And all of a sudden, I had all these requests to do radio interviews around the world. My website was talked about in the New York Times, the London Times. I did Irish National Radio, several shows. I was on Fox National News. I was on The View. I was on a show called The Other Half with Danny Bonaducci and Mario Lopez. So yeah, that was pretty exciting. So that's definitely in here. Oh, and the
Yeah.
coolest thing of all was after I was on The View, I walked back into the green room and there was this crowd of people, and I saw this head above all these people. And I heard this voice say, she was very good. She was very articulate. And the crowd of people opened up, and Gina Davis walked up to me and said, "Hi, I'm Gina." And I was just like, oh my God. I said, I
Is she
loved
like
you in
strikingly,
Beetlejuice.
yeah, seriously. Is she like strikingly beautiful?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like she'd be
Strikingly beautiful.
striking,
I mean,
yeah.
she's 6 feet tall for one thing. Like,
Oh,
she's about 6 feet tall and so nice. She was I mean, I
yeah.
was just, like, floored, so I always say that when I die, I may not have a headstone, but definitely in my not eulogy, but my what are the people
Obituary, obituary.
obituary, it's gonna say, "Gina Davis said I was articulate."
Yes. Can I ask how much money you raised? Did you
I
raise a lot of
only
money?
raised about $2,000. I didn't raise a whole lot of
Oh,
money.
yeah.
But it was really and people sent me things, like, people sent me cookbooks because I was blogging, so my website and it's still available on the Wayback Machine, you can see it.
Mhm.
Um, I had, like, a mailbag where I would answer email sarcastically usually because I had some nasty emails, go figure.
Yeah.
Um, and a blog where I blogged about what was going on, and so I was asking about cooking in a crock pot and trying to figure out ways to save money and be more efficient. And so people sent me cookbooks and letters. I have a pile of letters of
Oh,
encouragement. And so I always felt like even though I didn't make a whole lot of money, it was really motivating for me to
yeah.
be held accountable. Um, and I was kind of somebody, I have OCD, I have ADHD. And so it's always been really hard for me to finish something that I start. Like I've had a
Yeah.
million different jobs because I'll be really good at something and then I'm done with it. And then I move on to something new. And so I needed that accountability. And so that really helped me to be like, okay, I'll be accountable to these people who are looking at my website, especially when there were haters, people so the picture on the website was me sitting in a chair with my back to the camera and my hands tied behind my back. And people were jumping to conclusions, even though the whole front page I talked about how this was um, like an amicable arrangement, a divorce. Like he's a wonderful guy. We just aren't for each other. And people were accusing me of, like calling him a wife beater or whatever. Like, I never said
You're
anything
like,
like
"Just
that.
read it. Just read my page."
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna look through the chat and see what we got here.
Oh, I see one
Yeah,
here.
go
It's
ahead.
just a kind of a comment. My grandma is in the active dying phase after suffering a suspected stroke. She is on hospice, and I'm exhausted because she needs medication every 2 hours. So I haven't slept in almost 2 days.
Oh,
That's a hard one for
yeah,
us because
that's
we
a hard one.
really, both of us really believe that we need better in home caregiving services
Yeah.
available for people. And it's really hard because we see that all the time.
And that doesn't mean, and I think you'd agree, Penny, that doesn't mean that the hospice company's doing a bad job or they're, like, neglecting you, even though it might
Absolutely not.
feel like that because you're like, "What the heck? Why am I doing all the work?" I think what we do is a poor job at explaining that most of the work is going to fall on the family,
Yes.
and the expectations of, like, what the hospice company is actually going to do and what they're there for is what needs to be understood, which is, we're there to support, but the families, like Penny was saying, are the ones that are doing most of the work, giving that medication, staying up, giving it every 2 hours if it's needed, and we don't think it's fair, but
And
it
some of
is.
the onus is on the providers that refer people to hospice and tell them, oh, hospice will be able to give you lots of help. And they're not representing it in a way that's, factual. And so they come onto our services And yeah, we have to. Okay, somebody asked to see Kevin. Here he is.
There he is. Kevin's huge.
Nah, he looks big, but he only weighs 42 pounds. He's medium size.
Okay, let me see if I found one. I'm a caregiver for a 97-year-old mother-in-law with dementia, late stage 6. I want to put my question in early because I gotta go check on her. Oh, why are the antibiotics making my mother-in-law shake? And
I
then I'll say, I mean,
I don't know. I mean, and maybe it's not the antibiotics
right,
too.
that's yeah.
What was she put on for? A UTI? Is that why
Yeah, I
she?
was gonna say it could be the UTI that's making the
Yeah.
infection that's making her shake.
Yeah, because the antibiotics are, they're not going to kick in right away. They're not going to resolve everything immediately. So it might be the UTI.
Yeah,
Um,
I wouldn't necessarily
hey.
say they make them shake. I mean, I think a lot of times, again, and sorry, I'm like dominating here, Penny. You can
No, 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 it's fine.
um, put your word in too. But I think generally speaking, people always want answers for everything that happens, every little thing they see in the body, and things like shaking are like, "What's this?" You know? And a lot of times we don't always get the answers, as long as they stop shaking, as long as it's not persistent and really painful or causing a lot of issue or harm. It's kind of
Hmm.
like it could be the fever, it could be this, it could be that, like but
Yeah. We see
but
things we don't always understand ourselves. I mean, I've seen some crazy things happen with people that I've seen once in my life and never again, and
mhm,
still to this
mhm,
day don't know how to explain what I saw. I mean, it's
right.
something you always do want to bring up to the nurse because
Of
it might
course.
be something, like
Right.
not necessarily shaking, but if people are jerking, then they might have opioid toxicity. And that's something we can
Mhm.
really easily fix. So you do want to bring things up to the nurse, but also understand may not be the answer that you're looking for because it might be just I don't know.
Yep. And it doesn't mean that they don't care, and it doesn't mean that if you took them to the hospital, they would know there either.
Right.
There's not necessarily answers or tests you can do to know, and then you
Right.
have to weigh the pros and cons. Is it worth really trying to figure out the risk versus the benefit, Um,
Exactly. Especially when it
yeah,
comes to transporting somebody who's on end of life care to a
yeah,
hospital.
yeah.
Yeah.
Jerry Ann says, my mom is 88 and in hospice and has gangrene in her left foot. They're giving her Dilaudid and Tylenol, but it seems like she's drugged up one day and not the next. What do you think?
She might be transitioning.
Yeah.
She might be transitioning. So people sometimes have this little bit of a little roller coaster ride where they're people in transition are often like checking out. They're kind of I always describe it like they're here and then they're somewhere else. We don't know where. They go back and forth between that. So it might be that that's what's happening is that she's changing and getting closer to the end of life. If the dose is consistently the same every single time and being given around the clock at the same time, it's really unlikely that that is what's making her have this little up and down thing going on. What do you think, Julie?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. And it might not be because of the medication, especially if they're giving it consistently. And some days it seems, and then also it's like some days maybe her body absorbs it better for some reason. So maybe people just go up and down all the time. And again, like as long as they're like clean, safe, and comfortable, we might not always know why they're doing it or why their body's doing it. And we just need to be present with them and know that it's okay and they're not doing anything wrong, Kevin.
Stop
uh,
it. He's like a
Abig- oh, now you did cut out, Penny.
hang.
There you
Oh, I'm
are.
back.
Yeah. I
Ah,
was I was like, no, you did cut out.
best laid plans. Yeah, Randy called me. I
Oh,
forgot to
okay.
tell him, don't call me.
Oh, Abigail Baker has a good question.
Okay.
Abigail Baker says, "What are your thoughts about using suction at the end of life for secretions?"
Ooh, no, I'm very much against suction. For one thing, the secretions are too far back in the mouth to be able to just grab with an oral, like we call a yankar.
Yanko,
You
yeah.
can't really get them with that. So you have to do deep suctioning. And, when you introduce something foreign into the body responds by creating more. So if there's secretions, the body's going to create more secretions. Also, it's
Penny
just
taught me that. Penny taught me that. I didn't know
it,
that.
it's also interruptive to the dying process. And, it sounds terrible. It's not fun to do. And it sounds awful. And it's just kind of, I don't like to interrupt the dying process. And by the time somebody has those secretions that we also call the death rattle, they're really close to the end of life. Most people die within 48 hours after that death rattle starts, and they're unresponsive. So it's like really like interrupting that process to
Kevin. Okay, listen. There are 384 people here now, so just in case you guys don't know who this is Penny. This is hospice nurse Penny. She is on all socials. All of a sudden, we hear never mind.
Kevin.
I was going to do a bad joke. This is hospice nurse Penny. She's on all socials. She's also my bestie, and Penny, and her dog Kevin.
Yes.
And Penny, tell them about your book, please.
So my book is called Influencing Death, Reframing Dying for Better Living. And somehow
It's
my
amazing.
screen got inverted, so you can actually read that now, but I'm opposite from what I normally am, so I'm having difficulty.
Isn't that weird?
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so Influencing Death, Reframing Dying for Better Living. And it's a memoir, and it's about my life and what led me to be a hospice nurse. I kind of had a rocky road earlier in my life and wanted to do some service work. And it's got stories about hospice patients in there and stories about my life. It's educational. It's got humor in it. It's got inspiration in it,
It's
and
got everything you'd ever
got
want.
everything. It's
And
got everything.
I know Penny's life, and it's unbelievably interesting and cool and inspiring. And you can pre-order it now, and it's going to be out January 14th. So you'll get it very soon after you pre-order. And pre-orders are important, so get that book,
Yeah,
you
they're
guys.
very important for us. Yeah, so it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Tertulio. It's on Audible. The audio version is on Audible. It's on Kindle. It's on Nook. The ebooks are,
Oh,
and
I have a good question.
okay.
Dale has a good question. Hi, Penny. What's the oddest or weirdest thing that you've experienced with someone?
Oh, there's
I
a
mean,
few.
in life, or
Yeah, right. In life or as a hospice
yeah,
nurse. I'm gonna
right.
guess. I'm gonna just guess as a hospice nurse. Um, so one of the oddest things I've ever seen is a guy who was dying and his legs started getting these black lines on them. And it was like like modeling, but it was like this marbled look, but it was black. Like his legs looked like road maps from his ankles to his knees. And he died that day. And nobody knew what it was. And I've never seen it before, never seen it since. And that was one of the strangest things I have ever seen.
That is
Uh,
crazy.
yeah.
And no one knew
Another
what it was.
thing, another thing I saw that was really strange was I had a patient who had cancer and had her nose removed. And they didn't tell me in report that she had no nose. She didn't like to wear her prosthetic. So when I walked in the room, she had no nose at all. You could see her sinuses and everything. And of course, I used my nurse's face and introduced myself, and she was wonderful. And I do actually tell a little story about her in my book, um, because she was just lovely. She was the nicest lady. And but I have a chapter in here called The Dignity and Indignity of Dying, and kind of really talks about quality of life and how quality of life is what the person who's living it says it is, and
Mm.
goes into like medical aid in dying and why I support that, and how I had a patient that wanted to do it but couldn't, because he got too confused at the end of his life. So
Isn't it interesting how someone like that, like, they don't have a nose, or I had a patient without a nose, I had a patient with, half of a skull, half of a jaw, and after a while, you, like, don't even see it.
Yeah.
You don't even
Yeah.
see that, like, that's what's going on.
Yeah. I had a
It's
guy that had a tumor and his eye just kept getting lower and lower on his face. So his eye was like down here. But yeah, I mean, and I got to know him really well, and he was the coolest guy and treated me like a family member. And you do get to a point where like you just don't even really notice it anymore.
yeah, yeah. Sally is one of my regulars here, and she said, "Is it possible to move on from a rocky life?" I think so.
Oh
Is it
yeah.
possible to move
I
on
mean,
from a rocky life
well, let me just
period? Yeah.
explain Rocky to you.
Yeah.
I was a drug addict. I went to jail 3 times. I had a
How long?
domestic
Can
violence
I ask,
charge.
like, were you there for a while or no? I can't remember.
No, I only spent the night. Each time I spent the night. But one of my charges was an assault 4. And so when I went to nursing school, I was halfway through the program, and then they did the background check, and my instructor pulled me aside and said, "We just found something on your background check." I was like, "Oh shit." It had been 14 years.
Wow.
And she said, "This is not going to preclude you from getting your nursing license, but you might have trouble finding a job as a nurse." And spoiler alert, I never have. The only time it was a problem was when I didn't disclose it because I already worked for the organization and I figured they knew about it. And the courthouse, when I called to get it expunged, they said, "Oh, we don't have record of that anymore." I didn't know it would still come up on the state patrol background check. So that particular hospital that was part of this whole huge organization that I worked for said, "We can't hire you, but you're free to work at any of our other locations." So, because I was like, I wasn't trying to hide anything. You guys already knew this about me because I've been working for
I've
you
been
for 5
working.
years. So, you
Right,
know,
right, right.
so they knew it wasn't like intentional. But so yeah, you can definitely overcome a rocky life. I gave my son to his dad to raise when he was 4, and when he was 10, I started getting him back into my life. And by the time he was a teenager, I had custody back of him, and he lived with me until he graduated high school. And we have a wonderful relationship. I have 2
She sees,
grandchildren.
yeah, she sees her children. I mean, yeah, all your
Yeah.
kids all the time. I
Yeah.
mean, the fact that, like, Penny and I are really good friends, for those of you who don't know. So, like, the fact that, like, to hear you even say, like, I can't even picture or imagine that. So people do, like, you are an inspiration. You can be an inspiration to many. Like, the fact that you just changed your life and who you are from the inside out, like, just so completely, is like the most amazing thing. And
Thank you.
Sally said, "Thank you so much for your reply. I
And
only
I do
just
I
started
talk
the
all
bed
that's
clearing."
all in here too. Like
Yeah, that's all in her book,
this is
right?
in here. I talk about my struggles in this book with drugs and alcohol and jail and abusive relationships and self-destruction. I was suicidal when I was younger, and I was bullied as a child.
Yeah,
That's all in my book. I've always been very open. Um, just want to keep it real, you know.
yeah, yeah. Oh, Penny, you have to keep track of the time because I can't see it on my phone for some reason.
36 minutes.
Perfect.
We still have 14 minutes. And somebody
Okay,
wants
great.
us to discuss terminal agitation.
Yeah, that's great. Wait, hold on. Your book is on audio. Yes, the book is
Yes,
on
it is.
audio, and
And
it's her
I
voice.
narrated it. Yeah. Yeah. Whew, that was
Yeah,
hard.
yeah. Okay,
When you
sorry.
told me it
Terminal
was hard when you
agitation.
did it, I was like, well, I know you don't like reading as much as I do, but I'll probably do okay at it. And then I was just like, oh shit, it's really hard.
It's so hard. It's so hard. I know. Okay, terminal agitation.
Yeah.
Talk
So
about it, baby.
I got a story about terminal agitation in my book too. So I won't launch into that one. That's a long one, but it was an amazing one. But the one that to me I always remember that's not in my book was towards the end of. So I don't do patient care anymore because I work in quality. I actually work 3 days a week, and I'm getting ready to retire this year. And so just before I came out of the field, I had a patient who was 32, and she had pancreatic cancer, and she was in the hospital. She was on a high level of care for agitation. And when I met her, she was thrashing back and forth in the hospital bed. She would have been trying to get up, which is kind of a hallmark sign of terminal agitation, but she couldn't because she was very edematous. She was filled with fluid. She had
Mm,
asperger, so she was like filled with fluid all the way down to her elephant trunk legs, like huge,
yep.
huge,
Oh,
and just so incoherent. Couldn't say anything that was coherent. So I talked with the nurse and found out she had Haldol ordered, and I said, "I think we need to give her some Haldol." And she said, "Well, she had some in the emergency room." And I said, "Well, she needs to have more. Like, we need to be giving it to her around the clock." And so she did. She got it overnight, and the next day when I went to meet her, she was sitting up in the bed, and she looked just beautiful. And she held her hand out to me and introduced herself. And I said, "Yeah, I met you yesterday, but you probably don't remember me." And she said, "I was so out of it." She said, I'm a hospice social worker. And when that doctor told me I had only 3 months to live, I knew what that meant. And I think I had a nervous breakdown. And it was the first time I ever had a patient ever. And I've had lots of terminal agitation patients because working in the hospice care center for 7 years, that is something that
mhm.
brings a lot of people in, right? Nobody has ever been able to come back out of it and tell me what happened. And
Wow.
I just thought, wow, because we don't really know for sure what causes terminal agitation. We rule out the physical, the three P's. Do they have to pee? Do they have to poop? Are they having pain? And then if it's not that, then usually we say this is terminal agitation. But what drives that, we don't really know, except we're pretty sure that it's existential suffering because it happens a
Mm,
lot with younger people or people with young kids. And so, in that case, when she came back and said, I had a nervous breakdown, it really was existential suffering. Because if you work in hospice, you know that if an outside provider gives you 3 months to live, you probably don't have 3 months to live.
yeah, right. I want you to keep going on this, but I really want you to answer more questions that are coming in because they're really good.
Hmm.
So, I like this one because I want to see how you answer it. Not that that's a trick question, but can fentanyl make a dying person unresponsive?
An overdose of fentanyl could, but we
Yeah,
don't typically overdose our patients. We
right,
start people low and slow. And here's the thing about pain medication, whether it's fentanyl, morphine, Dilaudid, whatever we're giving somebody who's dying, um, there is a potential for it to be more sedating. That's always possible. But also sedating is dying.
is
So
dying. That's what I was
so
thinking.
we
It's
don't
like,
know, like, and I've had patients where the family said, "I think they're over medicated. Let's stop the pain meds." And the person didn't wake up because they were actively dying, but they were in pain because people who are actively dying can still experience pain.
yes,
So,
you're
yeah,
people who are dying are unresponsive, medication or not. Like, period. I mean, and yes, fentanyl can be sedating, but is it if they're on hospice or if someone's abusing fentanyl, yes, they can go unresponsive.
right,
But if
right. But
they're
but we
dying,
are
we're yeah,
giving reasonable, like, we don't ever just like blast someone. If people are opioid naive, especially, we start at low doses.
yeah,
It's like morphine. People are so worried about morphine. And if we have a patient who's opioid naive, we usually start them on 5 milligrams of morphine, which is
right,
less powerful than a Percocet. A Percocet is stronger than that.
right, right. I want to answer this question really quick. Laura, I see that you've been asking a lot of questions. I'm sorry I haven't been answering them. But real quick, she was asking a lot about like why are doctors so confusing in hospitals, da 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 da. And I just think it's important to say this really quick. I think in hospitals and in hospice, but in hospitals generally speaking, a lot of times we as healthcare workers kind of like forget that people don't fully know like the full course of like what's happening to them, like what's happening now and probably going to happen in 2 weeks and happen in like I know because I used to be an ICU nurse, and I know when we were an ICU nurse, we would like just talk about what's happening in the day, like not really understanding that the family did not get the bigger picture. So, like, it can
Mhm.
feel really confusing to families because they're not seeing the bigger picture because they're not understanding medically what's truly happening, and no one really takes the time fully to like explain it all because no one has the time. And we just assume everyone kind of knows or someone else is doing it. So I think that's what's probably happening, generally
And I
speaking.
love your story, and it's in your book too that I read, listened to, um, about your experience in the ICU when that patient was really dying and nobody was talking about it. And you finally said, "Can we talk about the big picture, like what's happening here?" And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's true. And it's especially true in hospitals because you'll have a hospitalist and then you have a pulmonologist that's addressing the lung
Mhm.
issues, or you might have a chemotherapist or an oncologist
Oncologist, yeah.
that's addressing the cancer issues. And so, and a lot of times they're not talking to each other. It's not
Yeah.
interdisciplinary, which is
Yeah.
something that hospice is, and that's what we love is that it's
Yeah.
interdisciplinary. But it's like nobody's really talking about. It's not whole person care. It's
Yeah.
they're very siloed in what they're doing. So that's why also it's important to have palliative care get involved because palliative
Yeah.
care will kind of bring it all together and do kind of the whole better big picture of it. And palliative care is getting to be quite a bit more popular and more available. When I started in hospice, palliative care was like,
Nothing. I
yeah,
mean, even me, and it was only 8 years ago, it felt like
mhm,
nothing.
yeah.
So,
Somebody's
yeah.
asked, Laura's asking how much blood can a person lose before dying? I don't know the answer to that, but there's an actual like amount of
Yeah,
how
I
much blood
mean,
an average person has in their body.
yeah, and it depends on if you're in the hospital already. I mean, if you're in the hospital, they're and you're not DNR, they'll just keep giving you blood product.
They'll
You know, they'll
transfuse
just
you.
keep yeah, they'll just keep doing it. So,
But if you're a hospice patient and you bleed out, typically it's pretty quick. People who
mhm.
I have a story about that in my book too, about a bleed out that happened at our hospice care center. I wasn't there for it, but the nurse that was there said it was like a crime scene and it went very
Oh,
fast,
yeah.
really fast. But I had
Someone asked why you're retiring. I know
because
why.
I am I'm 62 years old.
That's why. Don't let her fool you, folks. Look how hot she is.
I
We
probably
are
won't.
not sisters, okay? I know.
Yes, no, we're not sisters. And Julie is young enough to be my daughter. Um, Julie's the same age as my son. Actually, I think you're a year older than my son, but I had my son when I was
Yeah,
21. So,
yeah,
but what was I going to say? Oh, so yeah, I'm retiring from my
yeah.
organization, but I do plan on. I want to work per diem for a hospice agency. There's only one that serves the county that I live in. I live in a really sparsely populated county, and there's one agency that serves this county. It's not my agency, and so I'm thinking I'm going to go there and work per diem. I've ever since we bought our property in Eastern Washington, I've always kind of dreamed of doing the rural hospice nurse type thing because I
Yeah.
worked in Seattle and it was just, ugh. I mean, that's the reason why I stopped doing patient care because of the horrible traffic. I was in my car for hours. So I just kind of used to think, oh, I'd really love to drive around in the country and take care of people here. Um, and if
That
I
would be
can't,
cool, Penny.
I know I really want to do that. I haven't gone
Just
there,
not in the winter. Don't do it in the winter.
right, which is why I haven't really gone there yet. I'm going to wait.
Yeah.
And they're in Spokane, which is a 6 hour round trip from me. So I will have to go there for a couple weeks
Oh,
for the training. But after that, I would only be
okay.
in my county. So I wouldn't have to go.
This is a great question. Oh, actually, let's talk about your book one more time because there's
Okay.
452 people in here. So let's talk about your book that's out, Influencing Death, Reframing Dying for Better Living. And you can pre-order it now and it'll be at your house by January 14th, which is not that far away. And it's a
Right.
book about Penny's hospice experience, her life experience, and if you've missed some of this live, Penny's life experience is chef's kiss. Chef's kiss. It's amazing. So get your book now.
We've
It's
had
sold anywhere.
similar well, I
Yeah.
guess we haven't really had similar paths because you went to nursing school when you were in your 20s, right? I was 40
Yeah.
when I went. But I mean, as far as our
Drug
alcoholism,
addictions and alcoholism.
drug addiction, alcoholism, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You didn't go to
Yeah.
jail. So I'm like you
I didn't go to
supersized.
jail. Yeah, I didn't go to jail. Luckily. Luckily.
Yeah. We're both
Someone
sober,
else.
so we have that in common.
Yeah. I want to answer this question because it's good. Would you recommend, I want you to answer it, Penny, because I know what you're going to
Okay.
say. Would you recommend putting a patient on oxygen when he's already expressed his wish to die? He denies food and water now.
So oxygen in hospice is used for comfort. So we don't usually use enough to be life prolonging or life sustaining. I guess that's kind of the same thing. It's
Mhm.
only for comfort. If somebody doesn't want it, that's okay. If they're having shortness of breath, we can give them morphine. That's the gold standard for shortness of breath. It's safe. We give a little bit. It helps so much to ease that air hunger. Um, Not everybody wants oxygen. And one of the things I have noticed as a hospice nurse, especially working in the care center, is anytime I had a patient that came from the hospital, they always came with oxygen on, even if they didn't have a respiratory illness.
Mhm.
Everybody was put on oxygen. And I would always be like, why are they on oxygen? A lot of times at the end of life, people look like they're struggling to breathe, but it's a normal breathing pattern. Agonal breaths where they look like they're not moving any air, normal, doesn't cause them any pain. So if somebody doesn't want oxygen, then I would say, like, they don't have to have it.
Mhm.
The tubing can be uncomfortable. It smells funny. It's not always comfortable. And again, we usually do like 3 liters, 5 at the most. It's not
Mhm.
something that's going to make them live longer or die
No.
faster if you take it off. If you have a patient I've had patients who were on high flow oxygen, like 15
Yeah.
liters, and they didn't want it anymore. And then they died pretty quickly after that. But when we're talking 3 liters, 5 liters, it's not, it's nothing. It's not keeping them
Not,
alive. It's just
not,
it's just there for
it's not
comfort.
sustaining life. It's not,
Nope.
yeah, it's not prolonging their life. Right.
Right.
Right. Okay. I'm just looking through your comments, folks. Thanks for everyone being here. Great
Yeah.
turnout.
Thank you.
Everyone loves Hospice Nurse Penny. You can find her on YouTube, guys. She's on YouTube. She's on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Hospice Nurse Penny, wherever you get your socials.
I did a YouTube live. I think it was last weekend, and it was abysmal. Had like 20 people on. I was
On
like,
YouTube?
yeah.
Oh,
Like, wait, I got more
I think if
followers
you,
than that.
right? If you just start doing it more frequently, I think that would
Well,
change.
that's what I want to do, but I just
Yeah,
haven't been able to. But I'd like to do that. Like what you do is like a regular little.
a thing going on.
Yeah.
If someone hasn't signed a DNR and they have end stage liver failure, will the doctor still try to bring her back? Yeah, if this she's not DNR,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
If she is not DNR, unless she's incoherent and someone says don't, I
Yeah, if
suppose.
there's a
Yeah,
family member, although and it really depends on the context too. Like, are they in the hospital?
yeah,
Did they call EMS? Like some families will just not call EMS. They just won't. They'll be
yeah,
like, I've had lots of families like that where the patient just could not make the decision to be a DNR. They didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to change their code status. And then the family would pull us aside and go,
we're just not gonna
we're just
call.
not going
Yeah,
to call
yeah,
911. And
yeah,
I mean, some people will say, well, that's cruel. You're not honoring their wishes. What would be cruel is to do CPR on somebody who's dead and try to bring them back to life.
yeah,
Um, they're not going to be better when they come back. They're going to be worse.
yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, it is important to have that, and especially if they're in the hospital or
Yeah, if
if
she's in
they're
the
in their
hospital, they likely will. And if she's in the
yes.
hospital, if she's in the ICU, people in the ICU don't generally code because they're hooked up to machines that you can tell when someone's going to code. So it's like before they're actually CPR status, it's like you can tell that's already going to happen. So
There
very
needs
few
to be
people.
so much more education to the public about CPR, what that really means, and
I know.
like what
Yeah.
it does. Because the percentage of hospice patients that can survive after getting CPR is less than 2%.
Mhm.
That's low. And
Right.
for somebody who's not on hospice, it's like 15%. CPR is
Right.
good for somebody who is healthy, who is in an accident or like a
Right.
drowning accident or
Right.
whatever, you know. But for somebody who is really sick and compromised, it's not going to do a whole lot.
No, except for hurt them, cause
Mhm.
trauma.
Hurt them. Yeah.
Do you remember your first hospice patient, Penny? I don't
People
think I
ask me
do.
that. People ask me that all the time. Do you remember the first one that died? And I'm always like, I just got asked that in a podcast the other day. I do not remember. I remember the first person who died who really impacted me. And I wrote,
Mhm.
in fact, I did a TikTok video about that when I first got on TikTok 4 years ago. And it went viral. And that's what got me to be doing hospice stuff on TikTok. Because I didn't start
Wow,
off doing that on TikTok. I started off doing, dance trends and stupid stuff. But
that's cool.
and that story is in my book because I do talk about my journey on TikTok in my book as well. But it's memorable because it's the first time that somebody pointed out to me that a person who's dying looks like their spirit has left and their body is doing the work of dying because they have that death stare. Like there's nobody there anymore.
Yeah.
And so that was really memorable to me because I was a new hospice nurse. I hadn't really seen a whole lot of dead people. I probably had patients that died before that. I don't remember. But I
Right.
remember that one because that was just so like profound, um,
Yeah.
to see that.
I'm the same. The first one I can remember dying, I don't think was my first one, but they're just, and it was the couple that I put in my book, the Spanish speaking couple. He was young, they had young children. It was like a beautiful, beautiful death. I mean, horrifically sad because he was so young, but like that was the one that gave me it was like the most impactful was my first couple of years of hospice nursing. But I'm sure someone had died before that for sure, but specifically in the ICU too. But yeah, I don't remember my first hospice patient. I remember my first ICU patient, my very first
Oh,
ICU
really?
patient. Yeah, because it was my first day. I was scared shitless. I was at Johns Hopkins, and my preceptor, I had a really good preceptorship. It was 6 months long. My preceptor wanted me to go introduce myself and do my first assessment on my first patient. And I'd gotten report, and I remember hearing that they had an open belly. Did I ever tell you this one? They had an open belly, and I pretended like I knew what that was. And I was
You
just
know
like,
what?
okay.
I think I might have heard you talk about that, but I had a patient like that too once.
And I went in there, and he was, I thought, unconscious, and he was trached and all these different things, right? He was on a bunch of machines. And I pulled the sheet down and I saw this like big plastic thing on his abdomen. And I lifted the plastic thing up and I saw his insides. I saw his intestines, I saw organs, like I saw his whole inside. And I remember thinking like like shocked, and I kind of like jumped back, and then I looked up and he wasn't unconscious. He was awake and he was trached, and he looked at me and mouthed, because you can't talk when you're trached, everybody, and mouthed, "How does it look?"
Oh God. Did you say,
Penny!
"Great!
Yes, I literally said,
Fantastic!"
I put it down and I go, "Ew, da, 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 da." And I don't think he was fully with it because he wasn't saying that sarcastically, he was being, like, serious, he was not, like, totally with it, but, I will never forget that, I'll never forget that.
My guy was 45 and he had some kind of cancer and he ended up with two nephrostomies and an ileostomy. And he'd been at our hospice care center, and then he got better. He came in on a higher level of care, and we got his pain managed. And he went to a nursing home because he couldn't go back to his own apartment where he lived by himself. So he went to a nursing home, and he started having severe pain. And the stupid nursing home, for some reason, they didn't call the hospice nurse. They called 911, transported him to the hospital, and his bowel had perfed. And
Mm.
so the surgeon did surgery on him, and it was a dirty surgery, and they cleaned him out as good as they could, like he was full of poop. They cleaned him out as good as they could, stitched him up, and then he dehissed. His stitches opened up.
Oh my God.
And they tried stitching him again, and it did it again. His skin was so friable, they could not stitch him up and stay
Yeah.
closed. So they sent him to the hospice care center. And when he got there, he was unresponsive.
Oh,
And all we could do was put gauze on him and lay towels over him. And then he woke up and he wanted to eat.
oh my
So
God. I remember the story. I
I got him
remember the
orange
story.
jello, and all the orange jello was leaking out, and the bandages and the towel were all covered with orange jello. And
Wow.
we're just like, oh my God, I hope he
Is
doesn't
that in
want
the book?
something. No, I didn't put that one in the book. I did not put that one in the
Wow.
book.
This is how okay, this is how many stories Penny has that she didn't put that one in the book. Like, that's how many good stories she
I
has.
know. I know. That is a good one. I know I
Right?
do have a lot of good stories, but they didn't
You
all make
sure
it in
do,
there.
girl. No, no.
Otherwise, it would have been like Gone with the Wind. It would have been a huge book.
Right? Penny, what time is it? Is it 6
We have
o'clock or no?
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Yep.
That's amazing. Well, tell people about your book too right now before we leave. Before we leave.
Yes. So my book is called Influencing Death, Reframing Dying for Better Living. And it is a memoir. It's my journey to becoming a hospice nurse and how taking care of people who are dying helped me to live better. I also talk about death anxiety a lot in this book too, because I suffered from death anxiety and got over that by working in hospice. But you don't need to work in hospice to get over death anxiety. You just need to get to a place of understanding death and not being afraid to talk about it and being willing to accept that it will happen. Because, spoiler alert, it's going
Yeah.
to. And you
You
can
can
do
get
that. You can get to that place of acceptance a couple of ways. One is by participating in these live discussions with me and Julie, or with Julie, or with me, watching our videos, following us on our social media platforms, and reading our books. And that will really help.
and
To
where can you get your book? Where can you get it?
So it's available now for pre-order, and it is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can also go to hospicenursepenny.com, and I have a book page there with links um, to all the different places. It's available in audio, it's available in ebook, paperback, hardcover. It's on sale right now. The paperback version is on sale on Amazon, and it's a pre-order right now, but it's going to be released on January 14th. So
Which is
12
soon.
days.
Very soon.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna answer Tori's question, both of us, before we leave, because I think it's
Okay.
good. If you received a diagnosis with a poor prognosis, do you think you'd choose hospice or treatment for yourself? Would you let the disease run its course or try to fight it?
Well, it really depends on what the disease is. I would definitely be one that wants to know all of my options. I am wary of oncologists who tell you there's only one option and that option is treatment, because I know that there are other options. The other option could be not treatment. It would really depend on what the illness was. Is it something that is treatable? What's the survival rate? What is the treatment going to be like? If it's going to be treatment that's going to be impacting my quality of life negatively, then I would probably choose not to do it, or I might do a trial, and then discontinue it if I wasn't tolerating it. How about you,
Yeah.
Julie?
Yeah, it depends on the diagnosis. If the diagnosis is a for sure poor prognosis, kind of like no matter what, I would still weigh out my options. If I got the standard treatment, am I really going to live longer or am I really not going to live longer? Depends on it depends on a lot of things. That's why it's really important to know your options. I would specifically only be talking to an oncologist who is comfortable talking about death with me. If I
Yeah.
got an oncologist that was like instantly like, "Oh, let's not talk about that yet. We're not there yet." I would nope, next oncologist. Like I
Yeah.
need an
Yeah.
oncologist that's going to be like for real with me and like is just as comfortable talking about death as I am hearing about death. So I would make sure that was going on. And then there's a couple diseases that I would possibly do the death with dignity medication if I got. I mean, who knows? I don't know if I actually could do it, but not because of not morally, because I just don't know if I could actually drink it. But I don't know. Like if I got like ALS,
Yeah.
something like
Yeah, there's
a
some things that I would
glioblastoma.
do.
I might just take the end of life medication or do VSED. Like if I got like dementia, Penny, I might
If I
do
got
VSED
dementia, I'd probably do VSED, but it's hard because you have to do it early enough.
early enough, and
And
that's hard.
dementia is so it's hard to prognosticate. It depends on the type of dementia. People can live for 10 years, but I would not want to put
Not
my
well though.
family through that. I
Not
would
well for
not want to
10
put
years.
my family through that. But,
I know.
yeah, speaking of the oncologists, I would want an oncologist to be honest with me if I said to them, "What would you do if you
Yeah.
were in my place?" I
Yep.
would want them to be able to say, "Well, I would do this or I would do that." I wouldn't want them to say, "Well, it's really your decision." It's like when you
I
call the
know.
nurse hotline and they say, "Well, you can call 911 if you want." And you're like, "Well, should I?" And they're like, "Well, I'm not telling you that you can't. You can if you want." And you're just like, "Why did I even call you if you can't
Yeah,
tell me
this is
what
a
to
nurse
do?"
advice line. A nurse
Yeah,
advice line.
exactly. "We're
Please
not going to
guide
tell you you
me.
can't call 911. Well, will you tell me that I should or I shouldn't?" So yeah,
I
I
know.
would want a oncologist who's comfortable talking about, you know, all the options and what the truth is. Because have seen, and I'm sure you've seen too, too many people who just went through so much and their quality of life was horrible and then they died.
Mhm.
So
And they wouldn't have lived longer even if they like this whole idea of like, I'm not giving up. I'm
yeah,
gonna keep fighting, you know. I mean, we've seen that over and over
yeah.
again. And I get it. I'm not like putting that down, but it's like, but it's like, but at what cost? You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like there are times, and unfortunately, this is the hard truth that like it doesn't matter if you're not gonna give up or you're not gonna stop fighting. There's no fight to be had.
Hmm. You're
It's
still gonna die.
about living here
Right.
and now and being
Yes.
comfortable and doing what you want to fucking do and not
Yeah.
and make it the best you can because yeah, this whole idea of like
Being sick on chemotherapy, I mean, I just can't. That would be really hard to do. If it was a
yeah,
drug that was really going to rob me of quality of life, I would rather just no, thank you.
yeah, you
I'll
have
just
to
go on
I
hospice
do
and
feel like yeah, and it's not it's almost like toxic positivity or something. This idea of like just because you say it's not going to happen, it means it's not going to.
oh,
And it
yeah.
really, really hurts people. Like that's why I get so passionate about it because it really hurts them. It really hurts them and their families because they're not willing to accept what is.
Yeah.
And they kind of miss it. They miss it. They miss the journey, you
Yeah, I mean,
know.
people ask me all the time what were the most impactful what was the most impactful regret that anybody ever told you that they had? And it was a man who told me on the day that he died that he wished he never would have done chemotherapy. He said, "I started chemotherapy 3 weeks ago. I felt like shit the whole time, and here I am, I'm gonna die anyway." And he died that day. And that was just something that really was impactful to me. Like, yeah, wow. That really made me think a lot about what would I wanna do.
Yeah.
So, oh, what a
Okay.
somber note to end
I know.
on.
Wah, wah. Sorry, folks.
Yeah, but Kevin did calm down. So,
He did.
kudos
He
to the
did. Kudos to the
doggeroni.
dog. Kudos to the dog. And really, I think most people who know us know that for the most part, we make this topic as light as possible. But it's also like it's okay. It's somber, right? It's like
Yeah.
at least we're talking about it. That's what I think. At
Yeah,
least we're talking
I
about it.
agree. It's
And go follow Hospice Nurse Penny. Go follow Hospice Nurse
thank
Penny.
you.
Go buy her book, Influencing Death. You can get it now anywhere you get books. Just type in Influencing Death, Penny Hawkins, right? Penny Hawkins?
Penny Hawkins Smith, Penny, you can even
Okay,
just put Penny. There's no other books called Influencing Death. Mine's the only
great.
one. So you'll
Great, great,
find it
great.
easily. And it's got the me with the ring light on the front there.
Oh, thank you, Robert.
Some people have said it's like it looks like I'm going into the light. And I thought, well, that's interesting.
Oh, that's funny.
If you don't know I'm a TikTok influencer, you might not get the connection there, but if there's other ways to look at this, I guess. So, anyways, well, thank you so much, Julie, for having
Yeah.
me
I
on.
love you, girl. This
Love you
is great.
too. Yeah,
This is
it's
great.
great.
And yes, guys, I'll be back next Thursday. I'll come back. Someone just said next Thursday. But Penny and I won't be back. Penny's just a special guest, a
I'm
very
just a
special guest.
special guest.
That's right.
Yeah,
But I love you, girl.
yeah.
And thanks
Same here.
everybody who tuned
Back
in.
at
Great
ya.
questions. And anyway, I'll talk to you tomorrow, Penny.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye. Just kidding. How do I leave?
Oh, I got it. I figured it out.
Okay. Bye. There we go.